Okay, we've got a fascinating mess on the table today.
That's one way to put it.
We are looking at a transcript for a reaction video. It's titled, "This Will Fucking Radicalize You." And the writer is trying to defend Nickelodeon star Drake Bell from defamation.
Right, while also exposing this huge media conspiracy with journalists like Cat Tenbarge.
But here's the thing. The writer is so angry, so, vitriolic, and just so scattered that they're actively sabotaging their own case.
It is definitely high octane. I mean, I read through it and I felt like I was being yelled at for 20 minutes straight.
Exactly.
But, underneath all that shouting, there is actually a lot of evidence there. Witness testimony, court docs, plea deals, stuff like that.
There is. And that right there brings us to the first and, I think, most critical piece of feedback. It's about tonal consistency.
Okay.
The usage of extreme, hyperbolic invective and slurs actively dismantles the creator's authority on the central theme of objective truth versus media bias.
Hold on, though. I mean, this is the internet. It's a reaction video script. Isn't the anger the whole point?
I get that.
If you strip out the rage, don't you lose the audience that clicks on a title like that in the first place?
I understand that argument. And, there's definitely a market for rant content. But you have to look at the specific goal of the script.
Which is?
The central argument is that the media, people like Cat Tenbarge, are emotional propagandists who ignore evidence and just operate on feelings. The writer is claiming to be the rational counterweight. The whole facts don't care about your feelings guy.
Right. He's positioning himself as the arbiter of truth against the so-called liars.
Exactly. But then, to prove that he is the rational one, he uses language that is, frankly, unhinged. He uses slurs, he calls people retards, whores, and the gayest human of all time. He calls a female journalist Hijab of the Hut.
Yeah, that last one was intense. It definitely took me out of the legal analysis for a second.
It does more than take you out of it. It basically hands the opponent a win by using ad hominem attacks that are, arguably more vicious than the media lies he's exposing. The source just surrenders the moral high ground.
Right.
Imagine you're a neutral observer. You might be swayed by the evidence about Drake Bell, but the moment the narrator starts screaming sexual insults about a journalist, you just assume the narrator is unstable. You assume they're hateful.
And you dismiss the evidence along with the insults.
Of course you do. So it's an ethos problem. You can't claim the other side is hysterical while you are literally screaming slurs into a microphone.
You hit the nail on the head.
So here's a suggestion. Adopt a posture of ruthless objectivity.
Ruthless objectivity. That sounds a bit dry, doesn't it? How does that work for a radical video?
It's actually more aggressive than screaming. It means you let the facts do the violence.
Okay, I'm listening.
Let's look at the section on Cat Tenbarge. Currently, the text just relies on character attacks. He calls her a despicable person, a snake, a whore.
Okay, so strip those out. What do you have left?
What's left is the verifiable action. She reportedly claimed court documents were sealed when they were actually public. She lied about the accessibility of information to frame her narrative.
Which is objectively a breach of journalistic ethics. A huge one.
Right. So just let that fact stand on its own. You say, Cat Tenbarge stated these documents were sealed. In reality, they were public record, available to anyone with an internet connection. She either failed to check or she lied. That is a devastating indictment.
Yeah.
It hurts her credibility far more than calling her a bad name ever could.
I see what you mean. It paints her as incompetent or malicious without making the narrator look like a bully. It's
colder.
Colder is the key word. And we see this again with the whole Charlie Kirk segment. The writer is furious about the hypocrisy of people cheering for Charlie Kirk's medical issues.
Which is a valid point.
It is. But then he goes on this tangent saying, this lesbian could fuck himself. It's just noise. It distracts from his actual point, which is the words are violence, violence is speech double standard.
And that double standard argument is strong. The idea that the media treats certain words as physical violence, but then cheers for actual physical harm when it happens to their enemies. That's a real philosophical critique. Exactly. And it's completely buried under this lesbian could fuck himself. If you cut the insult, that critique shines through. You force the listener to confront the hypocrisy rather than letting them just, roll their eyes at the homophobia.
It prevents the listener from having an easy out. If you insult someone, the listener can just say, oh, this guy's a jerk, and tune out.
Right.
But if you just lay out the cold, hard facts, the listener has to sit with the discomfort of the truth.
Now we're getting it. But the problem isn't just the words he's using, it's where he's putting them. Which brings us to the second major issue, structural integration of macro and micro topics. The narrative suffers from severe scope whiplash.
Scope whiplash. I like that term. Is that referring to the way he jumps between topics?
It is. The script oscillates wildly between these huge, high-stakes geopolitical events and then really niche internet drama, all without establishing any connective tissue. It's just jarring.
I did notice that. 1 minute we're talking about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, the IQ of Somalia, and the death of Charlie Kirk. And then, without taking a breath, we're deep in the weeds of Drake Bell's text messages and YouTube copyright strikes.
It's like watching Schindler's List, and then suddenly the channel flips to an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Your brain just can't make the jump, and it trivializes the serious point. When you put Trump's assassination next to a Nickelodeon actor's sexting scandal, they both start to feel like cheap entertainment.
But isn't the writer trying to say that it's all the same thing? That the media lies about Trump in the same way they lie about Drake Bell?
That is absolutely the intent, but he doesn't build the bridge to get there. The transition is literally, speaking of Trump being manipulated, this is when Trump was almost assassinated, and then immediately, let's talk about Drake Bell. It feels chaotic.
Like a stream of consciousness rant, not a structured argument?
Exactly.
So how do we fix that? Do we cut the Trump stuff or cut the Drake Bell stuff?
You don't have to cut either. You just have to reframe them. Our suggestion is to utilize a microcosm framework.
Okay, break that down.
Frame the niche YouTuber drama not as some separate list of grievances, but as a specific, tangible example of the wider societal rot you introduced in the opening. The Drake Bell story is the microscope. The Trump story is the landscape.
So you start big and then drill down.
Precisely. Instead of treating them like two separate news items, you could introduce the Drake Bell segment by saying something like, "We see this mechanism of ignoring exculpatory evidence in national politics every single day. It feels abstract, but let's look at how that exact same mechanism is currently being weaponized in the entertainment industry to destroy a single man's life."
Oh, that is so much better. It tells the listener why we're suddenly talking about Drake Bell. It validates the gossip as a case study of the politics.
It raises the stakes. Suddenly, Drake Bell isn't just a celebrity with some drama. He's a canary in the coal mine. And you see the same issue with how the journalists are handled. Currently, references to CNN and Iran and Cat Tenbarge they're scattered all over the place like confetti.
Right. It feels like he's just taking random shots at anyone who crosses his mind.
So we need to grope those. Create a dedicated section, maybe call it the journalist archetype. Use the CNN-Iran reporting to establish the macro context, the global failure of truth, then introduce Cat Tenbarge as a specific case study of that archetype in action. Here is how this global failure manifests in a single article.
That gives the script a real sense of progression. It's not just a list of things the writer hates. It's a theory of how the world works, proven by example.
Precisely. Now, speaking of characters, let's look at the protagonist, or at least the person the writer is trying to defend alongside Drake Bell. That brings us to our third critique, handling of nuance in the left versus right narrative.
This is about Alexa Nicholas, right? The Zoe 101 actress?
Yes. And the treatment of her is incredibly confused. The monolithic and hostile characterization of the left undermines the specific praise that's given to Alexa Nicholas, creating a really muddled character arc.
I felt that too. On one hand, he's praising her. She retracted her accusations against Drake Bell. She looked at the evidence. She told the truth. He frames her as a hero.
But in the same breath, he mocks her for her previous associations. He calls her audience mentally ill, degenerate retards. He treats her difficult situation, being sued by the very people she used to align with, as a fuck around and find out moment.
It really sends a mixed signal. Is she a victim we should empathize with, or is she a villain getting what she deserves?
Exactly. And from a strategic standpoint, the writer needs the listener to sympathize with her. She is the one being sued by Cat Tenbarge.
Right.
If the listener thinks she deserves it for being a leftist, then the listener doesn't care if she wins the lawsuit.
That's a great point. If you want the audience to root for her legal victory, you can't spend 10 minutes just dunking on her.
You can't.
But the writer clearly hates her politics. How do you reconcile that?
You pivot the critique. Stop mocking the individual and start analyzing the system.
Okay, so instead of just saying she's stupid for having that audience, you analyze why that audience turned on her.
Yes. Frame it as a tragedy of audience capture. Analyze why her audience turned on her. It's not just because they are retards, as the text claims. It's because of a systemic inability in these polarized communities to accept new evidence.
Boom. Now she's a martyr. She's not just the leftist who got burned. She's a whistleblower who escaped the cult.
I see.
The text currently tries to make this point about the left eating its own by comparing it to religion, saying liberalism has no forgiveness.
I remember that. It got a bit theological for a moment there. It's an interesting thought, but it's just buried in insults. Refine that into a clearer psychological analysis. Ideological purity spirals punish admission of error. This explains the mechanism of the mob without insulting the intelligence of the listener. It makes the defense of Alexa Nicholas much, much stronger.
And it aligns with the ruthless objectivity we talked about earlier. It's an analysis of group psychology, not just name-calling.
Right. Moving on to our final major piece of feedback. This script is, at its heart, a legal defense. It talks about defamation, lawsuits, plea deals, but the writer keeps getting in his own way here, too. The distinction between legal exoneration and moral behavior is frequently blurred.
This is the Drake Bell section. The writer defends him against the pedophile allegations, but he keeps interjecting about how gross he finds him.
Exactly. The source attempts to defend Drake Bell from being called a predator by citing witness testimony and the specific plea deal, which was for child endangerment, right? Regarding text messages, not assault.
That is the legal reality.
It is, but the source muddies this by constantly saying things like cheats to the streets, disgusting and cringe, and don't talk to fans.
To be fair, though, if he doesn't say that, won't people accuse him of defending the behavior? He has to distance himself morally, or he looks like a creep defender.
He absolutely needs to create that distance, but the way he's weaving it all together just creates confusion. It makes it hard for the listener to track what Bell is legally innocent of versus what he's morally guilty of.
So you hear disgusting and guilty in the same sentence and just get lost.
You do. So the suggestion is to implement a legal partition. Sexual assault. Evidence. Witness testimony says he wasn't alone. Outcome. Plea to child endangerment regarding text messages. Establish that firm legal ground first.
So you establish his legal innocence regarding the assault before you call him a cringe husband.
Exactly. Once the legal facts are cemented in the listener's mind, then you can pivot to the moral judgment. Now that we know he isn't a rapist, we can admit he was a terrible husband and his texts were wildly inappropriate. It clarifies the argument.
It stops the moral grossness from bleeding over into the legal guilt.
Correct. And we need to apply the same legal precision to the Cat Tenbarge lawsuit. Currently, the text frames it like it's high school drama, all these references to gossip girls, spilling the tea, snakes.
But again, isn't that the genre? Commentary channels kind of run on.
They do. But this writer is talking about a $150,000 defamation lawsuit. If you want to be taken seriously on that, you have to drop the tea framing and pick up the legal framing.
So focus on the definition of defamation.
Focus explicitly on malice. Defamation isn't just being mean. It's making a false statement of fact with reckless disregard for the truth.
So, going back to the sealed documents.
Exactly. Frame the sealed documents lies strictly through the lens of legal malice. Show why Tenbarge is likely to lose a lawsuit based on the law, rather than just saying she deserves it because she's a snake.
It creates a much more compelling narrative. It's not mean girl versus mean girl. It's journalistic malpractice versus the law.
It elevates the entire piece. You turn a rant into a dossier. And that is really the summary of our critique today. We are trying to take a piece of content that is currently raw, explosive, and frankly, a bit of a mess.
And sharpen it into a weapon.
Yes, the raw materials are there. The anger is there. The evidence is there. It just needs discipline.
Lot of discipline.
It does. So to recap, first, swap the slurs for ruthless objectivity. Let the facts be the insult. Second, fix the scope whiplash by using the microcosm framework. Make Drake Bell the proof of the Trump narrative, not just a distraction from it.
Third, fix the Alexa Nicholas arc. Don't mock the victim you're trying to defend. Instead, analyze the system that attacked her.
And finally, the legal partition. Clearly separate what is a crime from what is just bad behavior. If the writer does these 4 things, this script goes from being a reaction video that just preaches to the choir to a piece of commentary that could actually change minds.
And maybe even radicalize them?
That is the title, isn't it? But you can't radicalize someone if they think you're crazy. You have to be the sanest person in the room.
That is a high bar for the internet.
It is, but it's the only way to win. We encourage the writer to make these edits. Scrub the insults, structure the arguments, partition the legal fact, and submit the work back to us. We would love to see the 2.0 version of this.
Me too. It has the potential to be devastatingly effective.
I definitely watch that version. Thanks for tuning into The Critique. Keep writing, keep refining, and we'll see you next time.